This is Hannah from the Hall Beer Shop, and you're listening to Daftaboutcraft.
Daftaboutcraft is sponsored by Hall Beer Shop, based in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. You can find a huge selection of craft beers in-store and online. Check them out at hall-beer.com.
This is Daftaboutcraft.
We're back again. Welcome to episode number 26 of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. With me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
We've got loads going on this time, as always. But we're delivering to you a brand new feature this time as well, Dave, which we're very pleased about.
Yep, quite excited to unveil that.
Tell them what it's called.
So it's called One Hop Wonders. Basically, there seems like there's so many single hop beers out there that it'd be a really good idea to get a few of them together and see what different brewers can get out of one hop. So no hiding place almost. What can you get it to do? What can you get it to taste of, smell of, texture, etc. So we're starting with the powerhouse hop.
Citra.
So it is
obviously.
Citra. So later on, we will be going through some Citra single hopped beers, and we will find out just exactly what you can do with that hop.
Yeah, and does it always taste the same? Does it taste different? Do different breweries handle it in different ways? We're discussing all of this, so it's going to be quite interesting. And we've also got our interview this time, which is with a brewery that we know very little about. Haven't even had any of their beers, so it's going to be a real learning curve for us. It's Reckless Dweeb, a nano brewery from Nottinghamshire. Add that to all our usual features, tried and tested. And the first one, we're going to kick it off right now. It's Brew to me.
I have got a beer from Neighbourhood Brew Co. I've got so many lined up for this that I think I have already pitched to you. I think we should probably do an episode where we just do a Brew to me special and just try and find as many new ones. It feels like there's loads popping up.
Well, I know when we first started the podcast, I looked at how many breweries there are in the UK, and I think there's about 2,500. That's not, that's across the whole spectrum of breweries. But I wonder how many there are now. I mean, we've lost some, but I bet there's a lot more now.
It does feel like that. I mean, I sort of mentioned sort of moving jobs, and that's enabled me to find a couple straight away. And we actually did have an email, didn't we, from a listener pointing out another brewery in that area, which we'll get to in due course, probably when we're talking about the Citras. But back to this. So Neighbourhood Brew Co. Our philosophy at Neighbourhood is to bring great craft beer to everyone. We have community at our core. That's really all the can gives away. What I'm drinking is a beer called Trellis Rainbow. It is a 5% pale. I know nothing else. There's no hop list or anything like that. So it's a bit of a journey into the unknown. I can't remember how I found these guys. I do know there's another brewery in Manchester which is making a little bit more waves. Sure Shot, they've just come out, haven't they?
Yeah, Sure Shot.
Which is
they did
former Cloudwater links.
Yeah, and they did a collab, didn't they, with Vocation some time ago, which was quite big.
Oh yes, they did. I'd forgotten about that one. Yeah, that made it into supermarkets.
It was in the supermarkets. Yeah. It was some way to start your to kickstart your brand, wasn't it? Getting straight into the supermarkets, and now they actually have released beers completely on their own. So they might be one to visit at some point. Neighbourhood Brew Co, by the way, in Stockport, just outside Manchester.
Most importantly, what have I got here? It's quite hazy. It's between yellow and orange, I would say.
So this is exciting because you don't know what's in here, so you can take a guess.
Very dry finish. I reckon it's going to be Citra and Mosaic, and I don't even know if there'll be anything else in that. It's got that slightly bubblegum nose, and then it's really quite dry, actually. Even scrolling through the website and having a search on Untappd, trying to find out a little bit more about what might be in here. They're not giving it away, so we'll have to trust my judgment here. Or if Neighbourhood Brew Co listen to this episode and then they want to let us know the secrets of what's in this, they can do.
I reckon I'm going to drop them an Insta and ask them so we can see how close you were.
It's initial fruitiness, so I'm going to say Citra, and then I'm torn. I think it's either Citra Simcoe or Citra Mosaic. Given how dry it's finishing, I might lean towards Simcoe, but I think it's one of the two.
Okay.
I don't think it's all three.
So it's quite a traditional pale. And so how's it faring? I mean, like you said before, these are hops that we come across all the time. We drink them all the time. How's it shaping up for you?
I might remember it. I don't dislike it. I've actually got another of their beers, which I'll probably have a little bit later on, which is an East Coast IPA. And I did buy a couple off their range. So I've got this.
Yeah, it sounds like you're suitably enticed to carry on and try a few more of theirs.
I don't mind it. I said I would go back and try Firebrick, but I'd almost have to have Firebrick fall in my lap, if that makes sense, for me to try them again. This I would, I'm quite happy to try their other beers, see if they've got something that really sort of pops and stands out. This one, solid if unspectacular.
Okay, well, let's see how mine fares. I'm getting Holland for mine. I'm going to Utrecht, so it's fairly mid-Netherlands, and I've got beer in a bottle from a brewery called the Curved Herring.
What excellent name.
And the beer is called the Crab and the Monkey 2, and it's a beer de coupage, which is basically a blended beer. So what we've got here, it's a blend of their Saison and a version of the Saison that spent a year in one of their barrels, and then the two are blended together. Apparently, the result of this should be a luxurious and dry beer with citrus and red fruit tones and a subtle funk and sourness. So I'm really looking forward to this. As you can imagine, this is right up my street.
It sounds like something I think I could probably give a good whirl. Where did you get this from?
Do you know, it's one of those that's been lurking in the cupboard, and I actually couldn't tell you.
The beer brand itself sounds brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, 375ml bottle. Not homemade sort of branding, but that sort of thing. You know what I mean. Quite rustic. Let's see how
Struggling to find them on the World Wide Web.
You need to search for De Kromme Haring, which is Kromme. Oh, yeah, that is subtle funk and sourness. That really is. It is. It actually ticks all the boxes. It is dry, keeps you going back. Citrus, yes. Funk, yes. Sourness, yeah. I think in my mind I thought it would be really sour. It's not one of those that makes you wince, it's so sour.
While you're enjoying that, I'm just perusing their website, and it's such a shame that, I mean, I stand to be corrected. It might be that we can get hold of this stuff quite easily, but there's some really interesting stuff. They've got sour ale with sea buckthorn, which I assume would be right up your strata. There's a barrel-aged keeping porter, which sounds really interesting. We've got smoked Märzen, and they've got their core range as well. There's a sour session IPA, a couple of Saisons, a Saison with Yuzu, a Saison Forte, an Imperial smoked porter.
It seems to me that the Netherlands is actually quite a craft hotbed these days. I've got a pal who drinks a lot of craft over there, and he's forever sending me pictures of weird and wonderful beers from breweries I've never heard of.
They do a core range deluxe, so you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 beers, a glass, and a tote bag, €30.
Wow, that's good, isn't it? I've sort of got in my mind I might go over to the Netherlands this year, so I need to start making a mental note of places to go to. That'd be up there.
Are you going to go in your car so we can just weigh it down and
Oh yeah, I usually take the car when I go to Holland. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that is really impressive.
Back to the beer. What do you think then? Wonderful colour.
Saisons and sours can be quite overpowering, can't they? But this is not. This is exactly what it says. It's subtle funk and sourness with a lovely citrus lemony edge to it. And,
did you cop what the ABV on it is?
7.5.
I had a look on. Does it taste
7.5?
Excuse me. Does it?
No.
Does it taste like that?
No. I really want to finish the whole bottle, but I know my wife will go nuts if I do, because I have a vague feeling that she may have picked this one out when we bought it, so I'm going to have to keep some for her. But it's really not. It's really excellent, and she will like it as well. That is superb.
Well, there we go then. The Curved Herring, they sound like a right hit. You need to set up some sort of Dutch distribution business, I think.
Yeah. I don't think you actually need to like Saisons to like that. If you just like something that's a little bit funky, a little bit sour,
Is there any sort of British beer you could compare it to vaguely? What about any of the wild beer stuff? Would it be along those lines?
I've got wild beer running through my head a little bit. Yes.
Little Earth Project, things like that?
Maybe. But I'll be very tempted to try more of their stuff to see if they've got their style. You know, you can tell it's one of theirs. I think when you have a Little Earth project, you can tell it's Little Earth, can't you? When you have a wild beer, you know it's them. I'd be fascinated to see if the same thing can be said of these guys. So I shall try and get some more. Excellent.
Ah, brilliant. A resounding hit. We like it when we find one of those.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.
Right, it's the time of the podcast where we get somebody on and give them a grilling. No, not really. We've just find out what they're all about. And we've got Ben from Reckless Dweeb Brewing in Nottinghamshire. I should say that neither Dave nor myself know anything about this brewery. We just sort of came across them on Instagram, got in touch with Ben, had a little conversation, and he's kindly agreed to come on. So this is going to be a real steep learning curve here. So you were just telling us there that you started home brewing in 2019, so not even 3 years ago.
I am definitely a newbie to it, but I got the bug quickly and fiercely. Started, I guess, the way anyone does with kits and bitting and bobbing. I was working full-time still during lockdown, but I needed something just to give me some kind of sense of reality and something to do. So I gave myself the task of turning my garage into a brewery and applying for licenses.
You see, in that first lockdown, we wanted to do something beery, so we started the podcast. But you started a brewery. You took it to the next stage.
I just want to see what could happen. So yeah.
And before you did even the sort of brewing with kits as a home brewer and that, that's your brewing experience? Because we've had previous guys on where it's like, well, I started with kits and then I went somewhere else and then I ended up doing my own thing. But I had maybe had some brewing experience elsewhere. Are you just completely self-taught and you've gone in, or have you sort of had some brewing experience before?
No, completely self-taught. Wow. Yeah, started with the kits, messed around. The first ones were horrendous. How no one died, I'm not entirely sure. But the thing that spurred me on was my brother-in-law. The first ever beer I made, he just looked me dead in the eye and went, "I do not like this."
So you had to improve it. You had to go up.
Yeah. So that was the first ever review. I was like, okay, we've got to get better at this. And then the next few kind of evolved, and then I got to the point where, again, my father-in-law did like a blind tasting at Christmas with some friends around, and I think it was an imperial stout with vanilla and a lot of sugar, and they basically refused to believe that it was homebrew at that point. So that was kind of the flip, and that really gave me the momentum to crack on, I guess.
I was sort of having a little look around the socials and stuff at the sort of beers you do, and you just said there you did an imperial stout. You've done all sorts of styles in a very short amount of time. Like
I say, I'm self-taught. I'm just jumping in and whatever excites me, whatever I want to try, I give it a go, and yeah, just jump in.
You've got no fear. You've got no fear. Planning. That's the thing.
No. Well, there's something to gain and very little to lose.
So have you given up the full-time work now, or are you still got your job?
I still work full-time. Right. This is very much a hobby that kind of got out of hand.
Yeah. And do you see it getting more out of hand? Would you like your life to go more beer than work?
Yeah, I've just possibly bankrupted the family and invested in an entirely new brewery that was collected. I drove to North Wales last Friday to collect it. It's not set up yet. I need to get all the electrics in, get all the plumbing sorted, dial in the numbers, but hopefully I've just increased the brewery size about tenfold. So,
oh wow,
and still based in the garage.
I can't fit anything else in there.
My brain's just trying to work out who in North Wales you bought this from.
Hull Brewing.
I think you could have had 1,000 guesses, David.
I wouldn't have got that. I wouldn't have got that one. So, what size were you before you made this investment?
I was actually brewing on one of a couple of Brewzillas. I had a 65 litre Digiboil and the 35 litre Brewzilla,
right?
Which gave mixed results. But the real pain was I was starting to get asked to attend beer festivals stuff, and I was literally double brewing just to fill a full cask for them. So it made sense to make the jump and try and do this to make it something real.
We've got you on where you are literally between kits. So unfortunately, we don't get to try any of your wares just yet. But when you sort of hoping to get anything new out and about, and have you already got ideas of what you sort of want to brew first on this new kit?
A lot of ideas. It should, I'm hoping, realistically within a month, should be the first brew going out. I kind of want to again really push the kit. So I think a double IPA will be the first
Wow.
one to go.
Nothing like starting like you need to go on.
I thought you were going to say, a nice little pale or a
Like
table
Citra
beer or something.
pale or something. No.
Oh, straight in with a big hitter. Excellent.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Who do you look at with brewing in terms of who you sort of appreciate what they do, who you like to sort of emulate?
There's so many, but I have found I've had a ridiculous amount of support from local breweries, and there are a lot in Nottinghamshire, really great ones. You've got your big boys, your Neon Raptor, Black Iris. Another reason I actually got into brewing was I met the original founder. I think you had him on your podcast a few months ago. Adam, yeah.
Aspects, yeah.
Great guy. I sat down with him at a Meet the Brewer night back in 2016. I think that possibly ignited a small flame. Breweries and beers I go for, there's Bang the Elephant locally.
Yeah.
They do fantastic beers. They're really killing it at the moment. There's also Fire Rock, very small nano brewery in Sutton and Ashfield. They're really stepping up the game. A couple of big stouts from them recently. But I enjoy the fun beers. Anything that's going to make someone smile. So your double IPAs, your big stouts.
You love the chance to experiment as well.
Yeah. Nothing against the easy drinking beers, but the big boys are more fun, I think.
So these are the sort of people you're looking up to, and you want to sort of emulate them.
There's a lot of brewers local that give you so much support. I've been to see them. I chat to them regularly. I ask them a million stupid questions because at the end of the day, I'm just an idiot in a garage now.
This is great, though. This is sort of what we all like about craft, though. There is still obviously this massive community spirit to help people out and help people get going. There's always going to be someone to point you in the right direction if you want it.
The drinking community is fantastic. That's obviously where I started, and it just transgresses all the way up to the top, I think. And it's just really lovely. It's nice to be part of something and you do feel included. I think that's just a big draw to the craft beer scene. I don't think enough people appreciate that, possibly.
Me and Dave have talked about this a lot. I think to people who are outside craft beer, mainly, maybe it seems a little bit, I don't really understand that, or it's a bit scary. But once you're into it, people are so supportive, aren't they, and welcoming? Yeah,
100%. I guess, to the outside, it could look a little bit snobby or, the thing I get a lot from non-craft drinkers, it tastes like flowers. But yeah, it's a very slippery slope. You try a few, you get involved, you try a few more beers, you get involved in the brewery, people talk. And before you know it,
you've got a kit in the garage.
You guys have got this. I've got a kit in the garage, and you guys have got this fantastic podcast. So.
No, you're right. It definitely does work like that. With the brewing process, obviously, we talked about what you're hoping to do and get a differ out there, which sounds great. Are you bottling, canning? Are you able to do that, or sort of what's the capability?
At the minute, I'm going down the route of mainly cask, just because that is kind of easier for me. I can bottle. I'm going to be 100% honest here. I find it a pain in the ass.
It's very time consuming, isn't
it? It really is. It's worth it in the fact that the beer gets out there more, which I really love. But yeah, I do have a lot of patience, and down the line, I would love to can. Yeah. I think that's maybe tail end of this year. I'll be looking to do that, and also maybe a few kegs. Let's face it, everyone enjoys a keg.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that sort of goes back to what we were just saying with that craft beer spirit. That if you can borrow someone's canning line to do a bit, then hopefully you've got enough people in the local area. Someone will put their hand up and say, "Yeah, you can come."
I'm pretty sure someone would tolerate me at some point.
Me and Dave have talked about this as well. There's so many breweries out there now. Do you think that it could almost reach a saturation point, or is there still scope for many, many more of them?
It's a difficult one, really, isn't it? Yes, there are a lot. There's so many now. But I think within the community, there's always room. And, people get bored, people leave. Companies change hands. You see it all the time. But I think the market and the community is growing. So I think there's still definitely room. for growth. Yeah.
And I think from what you've said, you're inspired by all the local brewers in your area, and you sort of all drive each other on. So it's very much one arrives and another one comes and another one off the back of it.
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
One thing we haven't touched upon yet is your name. Why are you called the Reckless Dweeb?
I was looking for something that I thought might be catchy.
I mean, it is that, for sure.
I love the word dweeb.
It's a good word, isn't it?
It's a forgotten word. It's not been used for too long. And it kind of fitted with the branding that I wanted to create. I kind of wanted that kind of 80s, early 90s retro.
And also it fits in with your sort of ethos, oh, look, I've got a new kit. Bang, here's a double IPA. A little bit reckless.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing thought out or well planned here. I'm afraid it's just...
So if you can fast forward in time, say 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, do you still want to be in the garage with a full-time job? Do you want to have a tap room? How, in an ideal world, how would you see all this panning out?
I would love to do this full-time. I'd love to be able to be in a position to leave full-time employment, do this independently. I would like to have my own brewery. And I went to America in, I think it was 2016, and fell in love with the way they do their kind of indoor tap rooms. I think it's becoming a thing in the UK a lot more, where you kind of, you can get the beer straight from the tanks onto tap, but with that kind of lovely feel to it. You can sit down. It's a social thing with a barbecue pit built in. With food vendors, regular visitors. That would be ideal. But I don't. Like I say, I'm a reckless dweeb, so I don't plan that far.
That's an interesting idea, because you're right. That brew tap, brew pub thing is definitely coming over more and more now. And whenever we have people on, if they haven't got a brew tap, we sort of say, "Oh, is that something?" This always the answer's 9 times out of 10 yes, because that's where the money is. We want people coming in, sitting down, and drinking the beer. But the outside thing and the food and spending the afternoon, that's American. And I don't know that that's quite caught up yet. I think people like going to brew taps, but it's almost like the British nature is, if I go to a city and 3 places have a brew tap, I need to go to all 3. Whereas Americans will go, okay, well, I'll just go to one and I'll spend all afternoon and evening and I'll have a great time. That's perhaps the difference. Maybe that will start to change over time. If you make it such a good experience, you don't want to go anywhere else. You'll just stay.
It'd be great if we could get to there. But yeah, you're definitely right. I guess the footfall falls. The bigger breweries are all located in bigger cities. So,
Well, you're fine with Nottingham. I know Nottingham is technically a small city, but it's not small in terms of what it's got going on craft-wise. So,
do you go to a lot of those tap rooms in Nottingham?
Don't get out too much with work and a young family. Nowhere near as much as I'd like to, but yes, it is a real treat for me to get to Neon Raptor tap room.
Yeah.
I haven't made it to Liquid Light yet, but I really want to.
Yeah, so you mentioned beer festivals and stuff a little bit earlier, and you've done quite a few of these in Nottinghamshire. Yes. And is there more plans along those lines for the months ahead?
I assume I'll be invited back to the Robin Hood's, if not the Camera Festival in October. I would love to pin down a couple more in the summer, but again with the kit only just arriving.
Yeah, it's a great chance to showcase what you can do, isn't it, at these local events? Yeah,
I find festivals fun to do. It's even more fun when you turn up, buy a drink, and just stand around and watch people. They don't have a clue who you are.
Yeah,
I would love a few more festivals, and then definitely look at getting some cans and bottles more out into the wild. There's a couple of local kind of shops supported me when I first started. Yuck Beer, Adventure Beer Club, and Fire Rock, who deliver locally. Mm-hmm. I'd love to try and maybe get some national websites as well.
Well, it sounds like people, for now, be satisfied with looking locally and in the Nottinghamshire area, or travel to Nottinghamshire for festivals if you can see that Reckless Dweeb are going to be there as well. So how can people follow you and keep up to date with what's going on in your brewing world?
by all means, check me out on Instagram. That's probably where I'm most active, or Facebook. You can just search for Reckless Dweeb. Weirdly, there's not another other searches that come up with that. I'm on Twitter. I try and stay away from Twitter, to be honest.
Everybody says this. Oh, I'm on Twitter, but I don't really go on Twitter. And we're the same. We're on there, but we don't use it much either.
It's an angry place.
It is a very angry place, isn't it?
But yeah, by all means, please come have a look, see what we're doing. Yeah, come watch.
Excellent.
An idiot in the garage.
Well, I think we come away from this, Dave, being excited to see what an idiot in the garage can do. It's really interesting to find someone like 9 times out of 10 when we have brewers on, they might probably be one step further along the ladder. And that's exciting. But to be one step back is even more exciting to see what a nano can become a micro and what that can become. So it's really good. I can't wait to try your beers at some point, and also to see where Reckless Dweeb ends up, because I think it's going to be quite an interesting ride.
Get in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram at Daftaboutcraft1.
Time on the podcast now for some tried and tested, where we reveal to you our favourite beer since our last episode. Have a scroll through all the beers we've been drinking on our Untapped, usually. That's how we do this. And then we see what we enjoyed the most. So go on, Dave, you can kick us off. Right, so what have you enjoyed drinking the most in the last 3 weeks, Dave?
I am going to go back all the way to 2020 in terms of when this beer was actually bottled, because I'm probably not drinking as much as I used to, which has given me chance, like you were saying earlier in Brew to Me, to just go through the fridges and find some gems. And I've also weirdly started to get into Stout Sunday, sort of subconsciously, without meaning to. And this comes from Nerd Brewing, who we talked about on previous episodes. It's Index Out of Bounds Oak-Aged Imperial Vanilla Stout, the Mole edition. And it's a beer, actually, you bought for me in 2020 for my birthday or for Christmas, as I seem to remember.
Okay. And there was no chance of this going past its best before date, because I think it was about 2025, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. 2025 is when it was due to go off. And I'd sat on it because I just wanted to keep it. And then I didn't have a particular occasion in mind. Last week, got to Sunday and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try that one this week. I'd sort of thought about it a couple of days in advance. You got the oak, you got the vanilla. It was heavy without being too sickly sweet. It was sort of that oak aged, and the bourbon was there without that just getting a bit one note. The vanilla sort of came through a bit as well. Just a really, really good example of what Nerd can do with their stouts. This was just a really good example. Hadn't had a Nerd beer in ages and loved it. So that's my tried and tested.
Excellent. Well, I went to Bristol a few weeks ago. We stayed overnight in Bristol, Monday into Tuesday, with our neighbours. Mentioned them on the last episode. We're getting them into the craft scene, and they're loving it. And they were up for a night away somewhere. So we went to Bristol, went to some great places, great venues. One of them was the Wild Beer Bar at Wapping Wharf, and it was there that I had my favourite beer from the last 3 weeks. And it was called Beyond Modus 8, a Flanders Red Ale at 11.2%. And this sort of came in the middle of a session of quite a lot of beers, but it still stands out. You know, when you have loads of beers, sometimes you think, oh, I can't really remember that one. But this stands out by a mile. So it was the 8th annual special edition of Wild's flagship barrel-aged beer. And it was a blend of their Modus Operandi and an Imperial version of Modus Operandi. So another blended beer, if you want, the same as in Brew to Me earlier. And this was really, really sharp, almost balsamic vinegar-like. But it just, but it was awesomely good. It just kept you going back and back and back. And my neighbour, Jason, he also, that was his beer of our Bristol trip. And he's fairly new into the craft scene on his journey, and he loved it as well. That was his standout beer. It just shows you it appeals to people who've been drinking a lot of craft for a few years, and those who haven't. It was a great, great beer. I don't know how you'd have got on with it. I'd love to have seen your face as you had it, because it was literally vinegar-like, but in a good way. It was marvellous.
I'm really intrigued now, because I think watch this space when we're going to end up doing Cancelon or something. You're sort of having a European rebirth over there. So I think at some point we might be going down the Goetze route, so watch this space.
But if you ever find yourself in Bristol, you've got to go to this wild beer bar at Wapping Wharf. I tell you what, their prices are incredible. We get so used to paying a lot of money for our beers in the craft scene when you go out to bars. But I mean, my wife Lisa, she had 3/3 of some special releases they'd done, some special collabs, and I think they were like £5 for the 3 of them, which would just seem ridiculously cheap to me. Get yourself there if you're in the area. Wild beer. So you might be thinking that now is the time for our drink along, but no, we're now doing that every second episode here on Daft About Craft. So when you download our next episode, the drink along in association with Hall Beer will be back. So is it now time for Hype or Tripe perhaps? No, because we're doing something special with Hype or Tripe this time. We're focusing on Chubbles from Cloudwater, the latest release of Chubbles. So we're going to release it as a Hype or Tripe standalone episode. So watch out for that in the next week or so. You'll be able to download that, a one-off special. But we have got something else to present to you this time. Cue the very jazzy music.
It is very jazzy indeed.
It is, isn't it?
Hopefully everyone likes it, and it is ushering in the first ever feature of One Hop Wonders, which is where we are going to drink a few beers, but they will all have the common denominator of being brewed with just the one hop. So there was only really one place to start, wasn't there?
Absolutely.
And that place, of course, is Citra, the pretty unashamed powerhouse of the craft beer scene.
I've got to say that in trying to track down some single hop Citra beers, I looked at the hop list for a lot of beers, and like you say, a huge amount of them have Citra, but to find Citra on its own is not actually as easy as you would think.
That's interesting, because I thought Citra was quite easy, because I had in mind you could go through from start to finish with it almost, and the start for certainly the UK would actually come from quite an unlikely source, Oakham Ales, who released Oakham Ales Citra all the way back in
2009, just a year after it was first used, in fact.
And they got those hops all the way from America. They were the first brewery to go out and get Citra hops and make a single Citra hop beer in the UK. And I mean, Oakham Ale Citra is still going. You can still get it in supermarkets. Unfortunately, couldn't get it in the supermarket I went to get one, because I hoped I was going to get there and start with that and say this is where it all came from. But I stayed in the supermarket because Citra now goes, like we were saying, it's in everything, more or less. Maybe been a little bit forgotten about.
Look at him padding this out. Show me what it is, man. I can't wait to see.
Well, I reckon you'll recognise it as soon as I show it.
Ah, of course. Yeah.
And for the non-visual bit of the podcast, i.e. all of it, Arbor's C-Bomb.
It's interesting, because I had one of Arbor's single hop beers recently, the Mosaic one. I really enjoyed that. So hopefully this will be just as good as that.
Arbor, just as a brewery, I don't think we have them on very often. And that's no real knock on them, actually. They're sort of putting out quite a lot still. Faked Alaska is a great beer if you've never had that. C-Bomb is straight up American pale ale brewed with large quantities of Citra hops, and it is 4.7%. So it's the perfect session pale. Now, let's see how it holds up. Well, straight away, it's that classic-y Citra nose. So it's quite zesty, it's quite citrusy, a little bit sweet.
Now, my hop variety wheel tells me that with Citra, you should be getting melon,
yes,
and mango.
Yes, I've got mango on the nose, and this actually would fade into more of a melony taste because it's only 4.7%, not that strong. A little bit bitter, but very soft bitterness. Like it's not the Mosaic Simcoe, which we were talking about earlier on an episode. This is what you would want from a Citra beer. I could have quite a few of these quite merrily.
The key thing here we really want to look at is, does every brewery handle a single hop in the same way? Now, you mentioned the words straight up there. You've got a straight up Citra Pale. And the beer I've got is actually called Straight Up.
Oh, okay.
And it is from Drop Project. And this is
I've had that.
5% Citra New England Pale.
Okay.
So I'm expecting this to be tremendously soft, very fruity, perhaps a bit of bitterness at the end. So, yeah, I mean, they look very similar in the glass, don't they, yours and mine?
They do. You've got a bigger head there. I would say yours also looks a little bit thicker and perhaps a bit fuller.
Yep. A little bit more bitterness than I thought, actually. Maybe not quite as much fruit as I thought. A lot of fruit up front, but then that gives way to more bitterness. But this is 5%, so it's a little bit stronger than yours.
You can still see, though, even I'm just sort of watching you pour that out. Although I said it looks full in the glass, to see it coming out, you can see it's not sort of coming out like a sort of big, heavy pour.
We talked about the melon and the mango as well, and more characteristics of this hop, which, as I mentioned before, came to prominence and was released to the brewing world in 2008. So what's that, 14 years ago? I was quite surprised. I got in my head this hop had been around forever.
It just highlights actually how new the scene is. I mean, it still feels, I think, to us like, you know, you think the history of beer and then you think the history of when these hops are now new hops and varieties and that are getting used. This is still so in its infancy.
Yeah, that really hammers the point home, doesn't it? Really well. Harsh bitterness is another characteristic, and I think that's what mine has got, that harsh bitterness.
Okay, I have no bitterness.
Interesting.
The soft bitterness has gone to absolutely nothing now.
Also
Absolutely
says
nothing.
we should get, obviously, citrus, but then grapefruit, lime, and those tropical fruits we mentioned. And I think we're getting the same things, but to different degrees.
Yeah, and I think my second beer, but it should really hammer those home. Well, the second beer I've got is Deya's Saturated in Citra.
Excellent.
This is an 8% dipper, so it's just full on. You know, it's part of their saturated series. Spoiler, we could probably see a few more of these perhaps turn up. Deya deliver big fruity beers as it is, but I thought they'd be an excellent example of how you can dial up one hop.
And for my second beer, I'm going to Newcastle, Full Circle, and I've got their Citra Pale called Easy Tiger, which is 4.7%. I'm slightly cooking the books because this is Cryo Citra.
Well, no, I think that's fair. That's still interesting. It's
still Citra, and it's just another example of what can be done with a single hop. I was thinking, because we had a Cryo beer on one of the episodes, and I was thinking, I think this is a bit faddy, maybe it's just going to fade away, but it's going on, and there's more and more people using these Cryo hops now.
It feels like the Cryo stuff has taken root, and that's now in.
Yeah.
The pop hops, that kind of stuff, that I don't know if that's going to stick around. But then we thought that with the Cryo, and that's now in.
Yeah.
So perhaps when people get hold of the pop stuff and they sort of start to really see what it can do, rather than using it just in a sort of faddy sense, it might start to take root a bit more, because we weren't particularly impressed with the pop stuff. Very sweet. But
it was kind of sweet, and once you'd got over the nose and the initial taste, there wasn't much left behind. It went to very little. Now I'll let you go first, so you're saturated in Citra.
Well, straight away, this is way sweeter. It smells like any of those sort of 4-5% Citra type beers times two. Literally, like the nose is 2 times as strong. It's twice as fruity. It's really quite intense, actually. There is the sweetness, but there's also now, possibly because you've mentioned it, that does feel like there's that limey sort of citrusness and that real tropical tang. And it sounds a bit 101. Just having had that and then having it essentially on steroids turned up like that, so much more fruit comes out of it like that. So much more. The session one's quite refreshing. This is now quite indulgent.
So if you'd have been given those beers blind, could you have identified Citra in both of them straight off, do you think? I hold my hands up. I find certain hops very hard to identify. But you've got 2 beers there that taste quite different, yet the hop is the same.
I think I get it in one.
Yeah.
I don't know if I get it in both, because it is actually really different, and almost the flavour profile on the dipper is so much more intense. I could almost see myself chucking out something saying like, I reckon someone's used a bit of Galaxy in this, or it's Galaxy.
There. Yeah. So what you've got there, you've got much more than you expected from a single hop. This is what Deya do, isn't it, with this series?
Yeah. I thought I'd pick a good exponent of who can do this really, really well, and they haven't let me down. As I say, I've had this before. I know it's good beer, and it still really packs a punch. But it's notable, actually, how much of a punch it packs just when you compare it to a single one. I think that's one of my biggest takeaways, actually. But if I want a single hops Citra type beer now, I might have to really think, I probably want it 6% and above, just because I want that fruit punch. Whereas if maybe it's barbecue season and I want something fruity that's easy to get rid of, probably go for the C-bomb and just go through that.
Right, I've just had a sip of the Full Circle, and my first thought here is there's much less bitterness involved.
Okay.
Let me just go back to my drop project. Yeah, definitely more bitterness with the drop project. That mean they taste they do taste quite similar. They're, interestingly enough, they're quite a different colour in the glass. The Full Circle looks a lot more sort of almost murky, but has got a lot more fruit, and that bitter edge has been taken away. And a bit like you said, I think I would have to hazard a guess, if I didn't know, that there'd be something else in there with the Citra. It doesn't just taste like Citra. And I guess that's the cryo element coming in.
I suppose it is worth pointing out, because people might be listening and sort of screaming into their headphones or whatever, that you're doing this but you don't know the ratios of, and we don't, and that is very fair. We don't know how much Citra is being used,
but the thing is, we rarely know what quantities of anything are being used, and the point here is that we've got 4 Citra beers and they all taste different,
but not radically different.
Not radically different, but subtly different. And enough to make you think, oh, is that just Citra? Maybe there's something else in there. So hop identification, even with one hop, is still not easy.
In an ideal world, we would live a little bit closer. And then what we could have done here is we could have lined all 4 up and probably done it blind.
Well, it would have been interesting, yeah.
And at some point we'll probably try and get together and we'll do one of these blind.
Yeah, I think we should.
But it does show that even though it feels like every other week or even every week there's a brewery chucking out a variation on Citra, Simcoe and Mosaic, perhaps if you have them each week in isolation, it's very easy to go, oh yeah, that tasted like that beer I had 2 weeks ago. Yeah, if you actually had that beer side by side, you'd probably pick out a lot more. So there is a lot more going on perhaps than what we think. And because we're just a bit predisposed to always having it, you sort of brush it off.
And we become a bit blasé. Oh, look, there's a brewery with another Citra beer out. But maybe we shouldn't, because we've just proved there that different breweries can do different things with the same hop. So, I mean, there's lots of other factors involved as well in the brewing process, not just chucking some hops in, obviously, but it's quite clear that they're handled in different ways by different people and can give you a different end result. So next time you see so-and-so, they've got a new Citra beer, and you think, oh, I've had Citra so many times, give it a try, because it might taste like something you haven't had before.
I think that's an excellent piece of advice to end this first effort of One Hop Wonders with. I might have been getting to the point where I was dismissing I was sort of looking for the different hop in there to be like, oh, I've had that so many times, I need to see something different. Well, maybe I don't. Yeah,
what you need to do is to see how different breweries handle those individual hops.
Yeah, exactly.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.
Daft About Craft.
You've been listening to Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast, sponsored by Hall Beer Shop in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. Check them out at hall-beer.com.